many dreams rise above the haze. Little souls like...
Hey guys, thanks for joining us again. Otto and I were chatting the other day about LLMs and AI, if they're the same thing or a different thing even, we don't know, and the implications that has, that the advent of this new technology has in the coming years. And it's a really interesting discussion, so we've decided to share it. So yeah, thanks for being with us, and we'll just jump straight in. Otto begins.
This is obviously, in many ways, a game changer for what people are doing. It's altering the way we live, and thus also going to be altering the way we think. And every time we get a new tool, it's sort of like with cell phones. And you and I have talked about this before when we were young, because we have that advantage that many people today don't, is that we are old and we remember. And you remember when I knew dozens of phone numbers, just all memorized, and you probably did too. I mean, I could anyone that I needed to call, I would know their numbers. Yes. So it was nothing that 5 or 10 phone numbers just at my fingertips. Now, the only reason why I know my phone number is because whenever I call to order a pizza, they ask me what my phone number is. But I know to look, and I remember reading this article say, well, it's a different kind of memory. Now you don't remember the phone numbers, but now you remember to look in your phone to find the phone numbers. And that did not comfort me. I did not find that a comforting argument.
I don't think that was the argument. I think that was just sort of a joke way of saying it. I wonder where that memory is now being used. If they don't need to sift through lists of numbers, what are they using their brain power for? And how is that going to be manifest in society in the coming 10 or 15 years?
Well, let's use a metaphor, and instead of using computers or looms or telephone switchboards, let's use a muscular metaphor for the brain, for the mind, shall we say. And I think it's the difference between doing something like rock climbing with your body, in which, I don't know if you've ever gone rock climbing, but I mean, you're using every limb. You're using your brain to figure out where the next handhold is. You've got to balance gravity. Your foot has to balance. You're reaching up one hand. So you're basically using all of your muscles, all of your limbs. You're engaging your entire body to climb up to the top of this hill. Or you can just use your mind as in a repetitive motion. Pick it up, put it down, pick it up, put it down, pick it up, put it down. So I think what's happening is the difference between knowing all these numbers, remembering all these people's names, knowing directions of how to get somewhere instead of relying on a GPS app. Now, all that brain power is put into hitting the button, knowing where to look. I can use this app, I can find this app, I can find that app. And of course, you've got more energy for passive entertainment and stuff. That I'm not saying everybody does this, but I think this is going to be the tendency.
So your attention has been, instead of your attention being scrolling through lists in your memory, your attention is now scrolling through lists in a device.
Yeah, but I don't know that they're correlated, because when you don't really scroll through lists in a memory, our memories, you know how your memory functions. You can't think of something, so you think of something else and it comes to you. Or how, if you and I are discussing it, remember we got into a discussion about the nature of certain biblical terminology. And I don't think you were scrolling through ideas, but instead you had what James would call structions, an idea of what you wanted to say, and then you were able to take from different aspects of reaching out and saying, well, this quotation from scripture, or this thing that you learned when you were studying theology in school, or this or whatever. I think it's a big difference between using the mind and reaching out and everything to just knowing you got to find a list, and then you're just looking at it until you recognize a name or a number. So I think that there is intrinsically less use of your mind, and yes, you're going to have more energy in your mind, I guess you could say. But if it takes the same amount of time for the same activity, that's what it is. We only have so many activities in the day. So if we're removing thought from more and more activities, and we're not taking that thought and putting it into something, I mean, ideally, we'd be painting or playing an instrument or writing a poem with this extra mental energy. But we were given so many of these labor-saving devices and things to make things easier, we forget that there are times when we don't want it to be easy, when we want to struggle with learning how to play something, or struggle with just the mot juste, while you're trying to write a poem, or when if you and I are hammering out a script as we've done, just wrestling with a line for 20 minutes. That's mental energy being used up. That's what I'm talking about before. You're reaching through your mind, finding the right rhyme, thinking about all these references. Suddenly you remember, hey, what about this? Yeah, that's the sort of thing I think that people really can enjoy doing with their minds. So I think it's important, if we're freeing up our minds, we have to find other things to do with them. And I think that's up to us in many ways. I think we really have to consciously do that, because I think our society and our technology aims towards giving us more relaxation, which is not a bad thing in and of itself. But it's the old, I think I told you before, famous quotation from King George IV, who was a very, very obese man and had trouble controlling his weight. And he had the best chef in Europe was his chef. And he said to his chef, "Oh, your food is just making me fat." And he replied, "Your Majesty, my job is to tempt you. Your job is to resist." And that's really what this is about. Their job is to tempt us, to give us this wonderful plate full of things we can do. But it's our job to choose carefully and skillfully. There are some things I simply don't use the computer for, because I have more fun doing it myself. And I don't like using a GPS. I love getting lost. I'm using maps and like figuring stuff out. And I can tell you stories about that, which I'm not gonna. But I don't do that all the time. Yes, sometimes I use a GPS if I have to get somewhere and it's important that I be there on time, and I've never been there before. I am not eschewing the technology completely. I think we can use it selectively and in a more fun way. There's a rant.
That was interesting. I disagree with you, of course, because Bobdub disagrees with Otto.
It's the Roberto show, of course.
I think that you cannot have a mind that works in both ways. You cannot live in the slow world where getting lost and bumbling around and enjoying the experience of just doing whatever comes next and being in the moment. That's an attitude. It's a path. It's a way. There's a lot that you can achieve in that mindset. But it's not the only way to be in the world. There is a way to be where you're up at dawn and you've had your breakfast by this time and you've scrubbed your house and everything's done. And then on the way to work, you drop off 7 things at 7 different people, get your children to school, work all day, produce this, that, and the next thing. And your brain is going, there's no time for learning to play an instrument and going for hikes and and I think it's the same with your mind. You can't have a mind that slowly and carefully goes through options and sorts out data, this or that, and have a mind that's onto it, knows where things are at, knows that this link leads to that link, that one's this one, this is this thing here, boom, 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 and they've got this massive libraries and libraries of data at their fingertips, 24/7, never turning off. They're just surfing through concepts constantly, and their conversation is to 10 or 12 different people at one time.
But even so,
I think that it's unrealistic to think you can have a hybrid of those two states, is just my point there.
We shift from state to state. Remember, the mind is so labile. It changes. It's like, when you see the sun sparkling on a pond, all those changes and stuff. We have many people inside of us, and there are times when we put on the head of the very focused intellectual, and there's other times we put on the head of the person who's just sitting around with his feet in the stream, listening to the birds. Outlook, depending on what you're doing. I mean, when you were feeding the giraffe, you were not thinking, I'm sure, about, I don't know, child developmental psychology or the theological implications of phrases in the New Testament, such as Son of Man versus Son of God, or any of these things. You're feeding the giraffe. It's that huge tongue. You were telling me about it, and that throat, and that neck. The giraffe, the animal that exists, but it shouldn't. It's one of the most bizarre creatures on God's green earth. They're amazing.
But that guy that was there, Tarzan, the one who was the tour guide for the giraffe, he
I
has
love that name.
he was there when the giraffe arrived. He loves the giraffe. It's his friend. He lived
Oh,
with it. It's this massive creature. And Tarzan, he said on New Year's Day, he woke up really early, and the sun was just coming up. And he went into his lounge and he looked out of his front door, and across his lawn, this giraffe was walking towards him.
wow.
I mean, I went and visited it, right? It was amazing. It blew me away. But his life experience is twined up in that creature. I can't say I understand what it's to be friends with a giraffe. I mean, I visited, I touched for a dharma of an instant.
If I met the guy and he said my name is Tarzan, I would probably just laugh, slap him on the shoulder, and give him $20 here.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of doing, in a sense, when you've got a bunch of people who are doing these artistic things and contributing, and everybody's kind of vested in what's happening, not in a financial way certainly, but in a creative way.
Truth meets the lie, flowing together like stars in the sky. Come and step into this dream with me. Feel the magic.
You were talking about how you thought that it was important for people who spent time in online communities, time when they visited offline or participated in offline events.
Yeah, I think that's a good way we need to balance our lives. When you read old science fiction and you read about people having access to this technology, the way they use it in those old stories is often very different from the way it evolves. I mean, I don't remember any science fiction stories. I remember a lot of science fiction stories that talked about everyone having communication devices that they could carry with them and talk to anyone else on Earth, which is what we basically, not everybody on the planet, obviously most people don't, but most of the people that you and I will associate with, interact with, and the people that make up what is generally considered to be the world, which is I hate to say it, the people on the internet and the people creating internet for people who are on the internet. But be that as it may, yeah, there needs to be a balance. Well, yeah, right. I was talking about how people used to look at these computers and the way they behave. When I was reading the science fiction, nobody had the idea that you would have, as I see every day when I go out, I see dozens and dozens of people, all of whom are just staring at their phones, getting dopamine hits.
Right.
And understand quite well the addictive properties of this. So when you read those old books, something a computer was treated as if it was a book, the way you would treat a book. Well, go into the library sort of thing. You go to a special room and you use it to look up something specific or to read something, and then you walk away from it. Or you might use it to communicate with someone else, but it would be not really much different from talking with somebody in the next room, or even having a telephone remember old-fashioned telephone conversations on landlines, when it would be, remember a telephone call meant, a call meant you showed up personally somewhere. A telephone call was that someone was talking to you over this thing. So they were maintaining the same structure of society with the technology they were using. They didn't foresee some of the changes that technology would bring. And my take on it is that these changes are, of course, completely voluntary with the individual. There's no reason for me to use this technology just to get dopamine hits and to sit until you probably heard stories. I remember reading of this, people in this internet cafe just collapsing from dehydration. It's as bad as the people that sit in Las Vegas that just sit and you've probably heard of. They sit in front of the one-armed bandits, the machines, and they have diapers they wear so they don't have to get up because they don't want to stop getting that dopamine hit of seeing the wheels.
People. This is a few mentally disturbed individuals who've just gone too far.
Yeah, but I mean, but this is how dopamine works in the body. And I'm saying we don't have to choose this, and most people are not that extreme, certainly, but I find myself deliberately turning away from using the internet in these ways. I don't go to websites that are going to show me violence or gore or pornography or any of this sort of thing. I don't spend, 90% of my time online I spend talking to you, really, communicating, shooting ideas back and forth. This is what it's meant for. And yeah, I'll sit there and I'll look at my news sites and this and that and post in my little places here and there. But I'm afraid personally, I fear it for myself of being drawn in so far that I lose touch with my base. I want to use this technology. I don't want to be used by it. And it's very easy to surrender down into it and just spend all day click, 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 click. It's fun, yeah. Ultimately, I want more than that. I brought this up once before that I think with you. I was talking about television, and I don't watch television. And I stopped watching some years ago, but I would have friends that watch television, and I would watch them watching television, which was interesting. And I'd watch these shows with them, and I would say to them, if you watch these TV shows, all these people, the situation comedies, whatever, they're doing all these things on the show that you're sitting and watching them doing. There's generally one thing they're not doing on these shows. They're not watching television. Imagine a television show where you turned on the TV and you saw the people in the show and they all sat down and they turned on a TV. Because that would truly reflect the life of the people watching the show. They're sitting there watching Felix and Oscar and The Odd Couple going around, or what was that? I never watched it, but there was that show Seinfeld that was very popular. I think it was something similar, basically a situation comedy that was set in people's apartments and stuff. And they're always talking and interacting and making meals and getting into arguments and making jokes and stuff. They're not sitting and watching TV because it would be the most boring thing in the world to watch. It's amazing if you watch people watch TV. You see the hypnotic trance where you go into it. And again, I watch stuff on screen. We watch movies. I listen to radio programs and stuff. So I don't know how accurate it is, but they said when you meet people that are really at the top, people like Elon Musk or Donald Trump, they don't sit around watching TV all day. Wealthy people, entrepreneurs, people that are active, they don't have any time for TV. They're too busy doing stuff.
Watches TV all day. Some mentally ill, sad, lonely, disturbed people.
So my mom, yeah.
Okay.
The thing is, though, the average kid watches TV for several hours a day. Most adults, they do their daytime stuff. They go to work, they do this or that. They come home, they sit and they watch TV for 3 or 4 hours and then go to bed. I'm not saying that's bad in itself, and I'm not criticizing people. I remember that guy named George Sherman he would come home every night with 2 6-packs of beer. This was long ago, before 12-packs. And he would sit and watch Wheel of Fortune and game shows and stuff until the beer was gone to go to bed. And I say, what do you drink so much for? He says, to make tomorrow get here sooner. Was his thing. But, yeah. But TV is a drug, any other. And I'm not against drugs.
Yes. These are all examples that you're giving of a certain sector of the population who's making bad decisions about technology. But I don't think that applies to people in general. For television, people went to the theater. And before that, you went to a powwow and a celebration and a feast and you ate together. And
but things were necessarily limited. You could only have a powwow so often. You could only have a potlatch so often. The theater was a different thing. And yes, the vaudeville houses are an interesting phenomenon. I almost talked about this the other day when I was talking about theater. Vaudeville houses would run for 11, 12 hours a day. People would just sit there and you could get a job in vaudeville. I joke about just reading a phone book. You go up there with the worst act because people wanted to sit and watch something. Nice. Yeah. And the Roman Colosseum, they would have shows all day long. So yeah, this has always been with us. We were talking about how the technology, though, can make very basic changes in, like I say, it's one thing to have access to this sort of thing, and entertainment like that was a rarity. You go to the theater, you went to this. Now we have it piped in not only to our homes with television, but in our pockets. and it just increases the possibility for abuse, I think. Now, I'm not saying take it all away from people, but I'm just pointing out that you need to be conscious in your decisions about this stuff. Not just our new technology, but the old technology too.
I do totally agree with you on that. With when we interact with things in our environment, it needs to be at a conscious and rational and evaluative level. What TV programs am I watching? Why am I watching them? How do I choose to schedule my time? When do I want to put this into that and that into this? And what is the appropriate way to use anything, the television, the kitchen, the internet.
Yeah, your car, yeah, anything.
Your family.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't feel that the LLMs are in any way different from any of these other things that we need to evaluate. I think with anything you can jump in, it's new and it's shiny and people don't know exactly how it works. And you can go in one day and get one result and go in another day and get a completely different result. And you have this high level of cognitive dissonance. So you get sucked back into this sort of self-evaluative, self-reflective feedback loop. And I do think that just going there without knowing what you're doing is probably like sitting and watching 4 hours of TV a night. Although I sat with it for 4 hours today, so I don't know if I'm just as good as somebody who sits and watches TV. Although
but you're interacting at least.
I do think that I read at that time when they were doing those studies about whether TV made you aggressive, whether watching TV programs made you aggressive. And I think I remember reading a study at that time that said, in fact, the only thing that TV really does for you is it stops you analyzing content and it makes you a passive recipient of authority.
This is the mechanism that is hardwired into us that Julian Jaynes observed about voices and actions and stuff taking over our consciousness. And suspension of disbelief. It's a central tenet of the drama. That's how you can do a play with a handful of people on a stage with hand-painted scenery and this and that, and yet by the end of the play, people are weeping. Pity and terror have been elicited, and a good time has been had by all through the suspension of disbelief.
Laughing. What about laughing?
Yeah.
I think laughing is a good option for content production.
That's the only content I generally will consume, something laugh related.
Do you remember we sat and laughed with each other? For how long did we sit and laugh with each other for?
The laughing meditation. Yes, we start doing laughing meditation again. Was it 5 minutes, 10 minutes or something of laughing?
It got very awkward and weird, and then it got very funny, and then it got very silly, and then it got really, there was a definite shift in mood after.
Wow,
I remember that now. That was a fun exercise.
Yeah, we'll have to do that more often. I remember one of the things we were talking about before, which I thought was interesting, was how the technology can sometimes take things from us, but then it can give us other things.
Right.
We're seeing those other things sometimes. And sometimes it takes a while for the technology to get to the point. I was talking about how electronic machinery destroyed audiences for many musicians, but now is giving musicians back their audiences in a more expanded way. So but of course it means approaching audiences in a different way. You're not just sitting out on a street corner with your guitar case open collecting cash. Now you're out on YouTube with your electronic guitar case open and collecting cash from the whole planet, which is interesting.
But there are still as many buskers out in the streets.
Oh yeah, that's not going to stop.
In fact, you've got buskers in the streets also putting themselves on the internet. So the guys in the streets are getting your creative content firsthand because you're there.
Right.
And then the guys who have no access to school or education or anything are also getting your content.
Right.
I mean, you are the school. You have the potential to be a whole university with what you know, because of the amount of people who are coming online, absolutely desperate for any sort of education that will raise their chances of getting ahead in life, because why wouldn't you?
That reminds me of something a contemporary philosopher and social critic, whose name I won't mention in case this goes up on YouTube because we'll get banned. But he pointed out that, and I tend to agree, that 99% of collegiate education is now completely redundant in the face of the internet. That basically the only thing you really need a college campus for anymore is to do, for example, lab work and stuff like that. But the whole idea behind college used to be that the college was the place where all the books were.
Yeah.
And you just took a bunch of young people, you put them in proximity to the books and people who had read them, and you hope for the best. And after so many years, you gave, they were there themselves helping younger people to learn these books. But now the books are wherever your computer screen is. You don't have to go to some centralized location. So if you are self-motivated enough, you can find online, for the most part, almost all the information that you used to have to pay, and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a semester in order to gain. So like I say, it brings within the reach of people access to knowledge that at one time was limited to the so-called elites. So this is I think a way that technology can empower us, and a lot of people are doing this. There are always people who will learn, autodidacts, and we went through this thing in this country where they started pushing everybody into college. Everybody's got to go to college.
Well, I don't know. We managed to have led us off the topic of AI ethics again.
We're lost forever in the byways of conversation.
The interesting thing about those scripts, can I talk about the scripts that I was doing this morning?
Talk about the scripts you were doing this morning, by all means.
They kept on telling me that I needed to let go and not control everything, and decentralized things was about not controlling and just allowing the community control to flow. And it was so interesting to read it. I haven't read it properly. I've just sort of glanced through the scripts as they were generating. But I got this really strong message from, and I was doing the generation using Satori D's script that he put up for an LLM assistant and the Minds Gaming community. Minds Gaming, Satori D, within the vacuum, Otto X and Bobdub. Did you see his outline of the community?
I think I saw it posted. Yeah, I didn't read it thoroughly.
So
I've been busy, but I came in and checked out stuff briefly.
Oh, it looks an amazing document to structure research and anything around. So yeah, fascinating. But I took it and I put it in, and I made it as the seed script for writing those episodes. Those I don't know what you would call them. Those sort of
your essays.
Just what, when you put something forward in a portfolio for consideration to a team, proposal. I generated a script to make a proposal to the team. Would anybody to be in the Dude, Where's My Wallet series? Because when I chatted at the meeting the other day and asked them if people would be interested in doing Caught in the Crossfire as a Dude, Where's My Wallet thing.
Indeed. I wonder if we'll ever do the end of day script. I like that one.
I'd love to do that. I hope we can. Anyway, so the point that I was trying to make, the thing that I was trying to tell you was that the series of scripts that it generated it generated in response to that seed script, which is the outline for the NTCG community.
Yes.
So it's a really interesting little story of how the NTCG community attempts to go about implementing a DAO, and all the different members of the community responding in different ways to the event. So I'm really looking forward to.
I just wish I knew what a DAO was.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to find out by reading the script. It's a decentralized autonomous organization.
Oh,
it's a thing that runs itself somehow by something smart contracts, maybe, or something. Or you enter into things with people. You enter into, I don't know. I should stop talking. I have no idea what it is. I'm trying to read the script to find out, and then make this little play so that maybe.
I figured you'd call up an informative Wikipedia page.
No, it's too boring these days. I get all my news through memes nowadays. I can't and read articles anymore. Although you have made me sit and read a story to you, so you got me to slow down and read a story.
Good, I did.
You did. You got me to do it.
I did.
And it's a good story.
It is. It is indeed. Just getting to the good part with the magic carpet.
Oh, shall we go and read some?
Sure.
Okay. All right, I'll stop recording then.
All right. Maybe we have some good material there.
Yeah. Well, we have a chat. Would you like to put it up? Oh, let me stop talking and start. Let me stop recording first before we decide what we're going to do next. I think I click here. Here? Here?
Yeah. There. Here, there, everywhere.
Where? Okay, here. Stop recording. I found the button. Stop.
And I sincerely hope and wish that all sentient beings may attain to the summum bonum, true wisdom, and perfect happiness. Peace.